Testing 1, 2, 3. Audio coming through. Comment away. If anything goes south in this audio video experience that we're trying to bring to you today for the first of its kind Find Your Place podcast experience with my dad, John Rist. Thanks for being here.
Yep.
We're inviting you guys to make comments on, feedback on the show today, because like I said, we're in an experiment launching this, and you're along the ride. So without further ado, we will get started. Welcome to episode 1 of 1 of the Find Your Place podcast experience. I got to say that again. I mean, what would be a better welcome?
Episode 1.0.
1.0, yeah. So today, I'm going to be interviewing someone who ultimately was very core to me finding my place in this world, because you're the key contributor to bringing me life. Thank you for that, Dad.
Yep.
Appreciate it. And I'm really excited about some of the conversations we've had leading into today. I mean, we've done a few podcasts here and there together.
Yep.
This podcast today that we're launching, and hopefully it'll be on Spotify and YouTube in the near future, this experience was set in motion with one key aim: to solve placelessness. The Find Your Place podcast experience is interviews with local leaders and also people that are making a difference in the world, whether it be through making habitat more accessible, creating a sense of community, or incepting a sense of hope in the future. And when it comes to like one of my heroes in those 3 topics, it's you, Dad, because you happen to have done all 3.
Okay, are you going to do this thing like happens with some of our siblings where my goal is to make them cry, only you're reversing roles here, you're going to make me cry?
Yeah. I mean, if there's not tears, then, I mean, you got to give the people what they want.
Yeah.
So you got to keep it real, keep it vulnerable. But I'm excited about doing this conversation with you today. And I wanted to start off with a simple question.
Yep.
Who is John Rist?
Okay. So the most succinct answer is that I'm somebody that has been arrested by a perfect person, who's been caught, interrupted, and prevented from destroying themselves, and has and keeps showing me the answer to that question.
Arrested by love.
Arrested by, and that word love, right, is so used so much. It so doesn't mean anything, and so.
So if love is in the title of who you are, then what is love?
It would be the whole goal of the answer to the sense of placelessness, that the lack of this thing, let's call it X, instead of love,
Creates Y.
creates this, fixes placelessness.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the arenas and all the different places, but it all comes down to the first question of who the heaven are you?
Mm.
And so that would be without using cliche words that everybody would then go off, I could say, oh, I'm a Christian, and maybe go, oh, that means this, or I could use all sorts of labels that would, you try to bring a definition without using the same words in the definition.
Well, defining love is certainly one of the cosmic invitations that we have being here. I want to make sure we capture all the sound quality coming through. So if you would take your bracelet off, because I just realized it's clinking against the table. Just take that off.
Okay.
We're just making modifications. Any other changes? All right. So because these next few questions are really important. First, you mentioned placelessness, and I realize for the sake of our audience, this is a kind of a custom term that we're bringing to the table here.
Yeah.
And from a business standpoint, we've really kind of isolated it into 3 categories that we aim to solve within the door companies and really anything that we're doing for me as a philanthropic ends, that a baseline of placelessness is some accessible habitat. You got to have a place to sleep at night. And ideally, it's a safe place, and ideally, it's an affordable place. But even with that, there's a sense of community or a sense of home that still is a question that has to be answered. And I think those two things feed directly into a much bigger problem / opportunity, which is a sense of hope or a sense of hopelessness as it relates to the future.
Yeah.
And so if we had to start with the problem, placelessness,
Yeah.
where has that showed up for you?
So you want to know about some of the bad stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
All right.
I know you're a collection of experiences,
Yeah.
a collection of stories. So,
Okay.
you know,
All
and
right.
I know you're going to share with us maybe some antidotes to placelessness as you've experienced it. But I'd love to know a little bit more about, you know, what your experience with placelessness has actually been.
Okay. So that's always a little bit hard because they're at, whatever I am, 73 or 72, 73, I forget, you forget all of it.
Go back to your father.
Well, so he was typical of fathers in the 60s and 70s, where he was really hardworking and everything, coming from World War II. Yeah, I'm sure he was just everybody said, oh, he's just a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And he was really gentle, intelligent, all these things. My perspective of him as just a little kid is that he didn't like me. He didn't love me. He didn't have affection for me. He wasn't a place where I was celebrated or unconditionally just because of who I am was cool or good or liked or any of that.
Mm.
And I'm sure he didn't mean to do that now, but
Yeah.
man, did it, in retrospect, create a vacuum. And in this world we live, vacuums are abhorred. And so there's lots of things that want to fill the vacuum. So I could tell you about some of those or not.
Yeah. Well, I think it's relevant, because of some of the questions that, I have for you today is specifically about parenting, I think, as a part of solving placelessness. That's obviously where it starts for everybody in trying to find their place in this world is what example does their parents leave behind for us? And you left an example for me, but you also inherited a pretty broken example. And so just to catch those up to speed who haven't heard your story, I think is a foundational point. What was ultimately the end of your relationship with your dad here on Earth?
Well, so when I was 14, I think a month before that, I get a knock on my door. And my dad had been home from work for a month because he had gotten laid off at Stanford Research Institute. He was a very successful scientist, very smart. But he had not gotten promoted to a position he had worked his whole life for. And in fact, he had gone to somebody else, and it crushed him.
Mm.
And as a result, he actually had had some heart conditions like 7 years earlier, and his doctor advised that he take time off work. So that about a couple weeks before Christmas, he took time off, and he was like staying around the house in his pajamas all day, very unusual.
Yeah.
Not, shaving himself, stuff like that. And he would drink a little bit. He always did that, but he was always under control. And so I think it was probably maybe sometime during that period, he comes and knock on my door in the evening. I'm a 14-year-old kid with growing hair, trying to be a hippie with all my little insecurities, very emotionally, at this point, shut down to any kind of emotional interaction with my dad. So he comes and knocking on my door, and I open it. I'm like, yeah? And he goes, and he's a little bit drunk, so he's a little bit, like, emotionally loosened up.
Yeah.
Not a lot. And he goes, well, I just wanted to talk to you. And I was like, this is so weird, okay. And then
Cue all the parents with 14-year-old teenagers.
Like I didn't know what was going on to me, but the real answer is, oh, well, why didn't you do this when I was 6 months old and 8 months old and a year old and 2 years and 3 years and 4 years when, by the way, my mother was actually doing inappropriate things with me, with blah, 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 because of the vacuum. And none of that went through my mind because I'm at this point, it's not an intellectual response.
Yeah.
It's an emotional response. So anyway, I was probably just a total dip. Like I was probably like, what do you want? And he's probably like trying, to do something. And so then he asked me a question. He goes, well, I have all this stuff. And like, what does it matter? Like, it was a great question. Like, we lived in Atherton. We had money. We had all the stuff. And here he's collapsing. And in my immaturity, my response in myself, because I actually knew about that. I knew that money wasn't where it. I knew that our family lacked stuff. And I knew it all intuitively. And my response was, I didn't even say it, was like, well, obviously all this stuff isn't where it's at, you dummy. Like, I had my little adolescent spiritual superiority complex going.
Yeah.
But I didn't say that. I just go, well, God, but it wasn't like a communication. It was more like, you dummy, of course not. And then he said this. He goes, why do you, and it was like he wanted to talk more, and it was like I was close. He goes, why do you always push me away? And I'm like floored. Like, I am pushing him away.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is like, well, because you always push me away, and now you're going to fix it? It doesn't work that way. I mean, emotions don't work that way.
Yeah.
And so I literally I slowly closed the door on him. And about 2 weeks later, I think, I don't know exact timing, maybe 3, it was a similar time at night. Probably had just gone to bed, and I heard shouts from the next room. They were really like unnerving shouts, and it was my mother and my sister. So I go down the hall. My dad's laying in bed. They're crying out and everything, and he's having a heart attack. And so my mom is freaked out, and my sister. And so I come in the room, and she says, quick, do resuscitation on him, which I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, mind you, you're 14
I'm
years old.
14. I've never had trained in that, and she's completely frantic, which was what she would do sometimes. So I get over him, and I just start blowing into his mouth, and he's like going. Anyway, he's dying in front of me, and I can actually feel like the throw up and stuff, and I felt like I was killing. I felt like I was making it worse, but I was just doing what I could always do, like blowing in somebody's mouth, not knowing what I'm doing. Anyway, after a little bit, paramedics show up. They get us out of there, and I walked by the room a little bit later, and I saw one of the paramedics waving his head, shaking his head. And then they took him. They were still trying to resuscitate him, but I knew he was gone. Yeah. And so the next 6 months, my mom basically, or longer, it was like she died too.
Yeah.
And so in a very short time, I basically, for all intents and purposes, became I became parentless. And I began more than ever that journey of being a survivor at 14.
Thank you for your vulnerability.
Yeah.
I know that that's a super heavy point to jump off into the conversation of, well, how do you parent 8 children, which I know you raised, and how do you go through that journey with your own family, with the context that I know many people will relate with, of being of inheriting, little to no foundation to stand on. I mean, you had something, but it was pretty busted, and you got the baton passed pretty early to take care of your folks. So, as that putting a feather in that story, I want to zoom forward to the now.
Okay.
And I just want to ask you, in all the journey that you've gone through, what is it that you do now, and why do you do it?
So now, it's almost kind of like whether I'm here or I'm in Europe, where we're going to go, never been, or India, or on the street last night in Salem, talking to homeless people, or at a church service, or with the kids for a birthday party. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it's all becoming the same thing. And it's all the same. It's just that I have this relationship with another person that's with me all the time, who's perfect. And I'm more aware than ever that I fall short in all these different places. But I'm also more aware than ever that he never intended me to do any of that stuff alone. And that was the problem the whole time, is that I either had no connection with him or a very limited or an inhibited connection. And it's still not perfect because I'm not perfect and I haven't met anybody yet. So what I do, it's kind of like if you can think of having a perfect friend that was with you all the time, or what if you were continually on your honeymoon or something? You can imagine like the perfect relationship. Like what would you do? Well, you would do stuff. You would go out to dinner, you go to places. But the big key that whole time was that you're doing it with this person. And so in this case, it's all about maintaining, or not even maintaining, it's all about sensing that person. And then he helps me. He gives me stuff to say. And the more that I get in tune to it, the more amazed I am at what he says, what he does.
It's if I'm asking this question in redundancy, but I think it's relevant. Like if you're looking at two fields of thought, you know, one being we're spiritual beings having a temporary physical experience,
Yeah.
and another field of thought being we're physical beings having occasional spiritual experiences. Which camp would you put yourself in?
Well, definitely, we're spiritual beings with a physical temporary house.
Yeah. So that obviously that's going to frame everything that builds off of that in terms of your relationship with God and your relationship with yourself.
Yep.
But I want to go back to now finding your place, right? What that looked like, because you had this just traumatic sort of placelessness through parentlessness kind of introduction to your teenage years.
Right, and then you try to find your place with peers. So when
Yeah.
I was 16, I remember first time I got drunk, it was like, oh, I found it. This is the answer because I experienced this, and so I was like immediately hooked. Okay.
Yeah.
And so then I thought, in a sense, it's like I'm finding my place.
Yeah.
Like I literally remember, this is so funny. If you would have asked me at 16 years old my definition of life, I think even when I got drunk, I go, this is life. Like being drunk is life.
Yeah.
Because what was really happening, though, is that I was getting in touch with some of the buried emotions that were all suppressed. So I was experiencing part of life.
Yeah.
But obviously, in the end, that's not the answer for. And so then what happened is that I began to get more involved in other drugs and my group of friends and stuff like that. And you're finding a place. And then I remember one pivotal moment would have been a freshman in college. And I'm sitting around a circle. We're all drinking, smoking marijuana, and we took a hallucinogenic drug of some kind. They said it was, I don't know what it was, PCP or I don't know, it was supposed to be mescaline.
Yeah.
I think afterwards we found out
So
it was
an
something horrible,
unknown
something
amount,
like,
an undosed
like,
amount of
I think
psychedelics.
anyway, the bottom line is during that thing, my placelessness suddenly got lambasted, suddenly, traumatically, with paranoid thoughts that everybody in the room was knowing all my thoughts. I was ruined forever. I literally stumbled down the hall to my bed, and the door fell on my bed, and I was actually having hallucinations. I was full of just incredible paranoia.
Yeah.
Type of paranoia many people know about that I had had earlier in life. And so normally when you're on an LSD trip, when you wake up the next morning, it's over. Like, oh, the trip's over. So I finally fell asleep. I wake up the next morning, the paranoia was still there.
Yikes.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
And it ended up lasting on and off for about 6 months.
Wow.
So that was an example, one of many, of where a false place was latched onto, and then it dissolved. And then there were others. Yeah.
The illusion of belonging and enlightenment that ultimately left you in a worse spot. Yeah. Quick check on video. We're good. Okay. So you go through all kinds of what not to do's And I know that there's people that can relate with this journey. I mean, we're all trying to find our place in our own way all the time. We're all putting
Yeah.
tentacles out for love, acceptance, and security. Everyone wants to belong. Everyone wants to feel that place. You go through all this experience of things that don't work,
Yeah.
and ultimately, I'm curious for you, the the um, the decision to then have a big family.
Yeah.
You know, I know we're kind of jumping around the story,
Yeah.
but you have this. You know, you've been handed a really challenging grid for
Okay.
your
No, that's
parenting.
a great.
Yeah,
So so the answer to that is again coming back to this being, if you will, it's like a crisis intervention. So there was
Yeah.
an intervention in my life. Here's,
Yeah.
if you can imagine, like somebody who's all bogged down with all sorts of problems, maybe medically, and they, to the point they're so screwed up, they're like practically dying on the sidewalk, and then some medical people see him, and they don't start asking the person like, well, this, that. They go, this guy, I know what this guy needs. We're going to intervene. We're going to take him to the hospital. We're going to give him what he needs, and then maybe he'll start understanding it. So literally, that's kind of how bad it was by the time I got to 19,
Yeah.
but not too long after that episode. And so all I can explain it is that there was an intervention by God, and you've heard many stories about people finding God and conversions, and you know, one story after another. And I'm sure that there's always going to be skepticism, and some people maybe share them, you know, with weird motives. I don't know all that. All I can tell you is that when I was 19, I had that kind of intervention with the Creator. And I discovered that He is, in fact, Jesus Christ. That was a big hurdle because I was totally biased against anything Christian because of the upbringing I had had.
What was your spiritual belief before that?
It was that God, God's good, and basically, like, what isn't God? We're all, you know, we're all God, and evil's just an illusion, and you just need to get to this point of some sort of spiritual transcendence where, you know, you're so spiritual that you're above all of the illusion of evil in the world, and so very Eastern, and certainly no place for the idea of a personal God having to send an eternal Son to die on the cross for their sins. And sin, no, man is basically, you know, we're all God, and that if we get it, we'll all dissolve into this one thing. And there's no acknowledgement of personal fault, sin, responsibility, or anything like that. So anyway, all of that really doesn't matter. It does matter, but the interventionist, when he comes in, what I realized was, and this was so amazing, is that he was not going to force it on me, and I fought it for quite a while. I had people that would come across my path in uncanny ways, sharing about Christianity, and I would argue with them and yell with them. But finally, when I actually made the choice, I was alone. And it looked like this. It was like I was trying to concentrate and I couldn't. I finally just I was studying, I was at UC Santa Barbara, threw my books down and I said, okay, God, I give it all up to you. And when I said that, I was actually talking to him, even though he's invisible, and I knew it, and I totally meant it. And in that process, what I was saying was that I have not done that before. And I'm actually surrendering the ultimate control of my life, because up to this point, I've actually been where the buck stops. I've had to be the one that fended for myself. And now I'm actually saying, I can't. I need to be saved. I can't fix myself. I can't save myself. I can't heal myself. Whatever word you want to use. I'm blanked up, and I admit it. And you're telling me that you're the savior of whatever it is? And we don't even have to discuss it more. Would you just believe that much? Would you just go all in? It's literally like you're in a burning building and the guy's saying, look, you can either jump out here and we'll catch you or not. And you make that choice, even though, well, what kind of net do you have? And blah, blah, and what's your, and what, blah, blah, blah. You just go, I'm going to take the word of the offer.
And you made the jump.
I made the jump. And the perfect thing what he said was, John, I am the way, I am the truth. I was really big on truth. Like if you find truth, that's everything. I am the truth.
Yeah.
And I am the life. And no one comes to it except through me. So that was it. And everything changed, though I was still screwed up in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I still am in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So we should get to that. I'm just reflecting back the old adage, the truth will set you free. But what they don't tell you is that it'll really piss you off in the process.
Yeah.
And maybe hurt really bad.
Yeah.
And maybe cause you to have to question everything that you thought was truth in order to actually look at truth. So this truth for you, you accepted this as truth for you.
So I was 19.
You're 19. And
So to get to your question about the marriage and everything, I understand too that I had deep sexual wounds. So
well, I want to touch on something really quick.
Yeah.
Because I really what I want to focus on is the truth that should have set you free in that moment. It's not like you made this decision and all of a sudden everything was daisies and roses.
no.
And so I want to keep this focused on specifically the part of the brokenness that continued to have to be healed even through the parenting journey, because I think that there's a lot of people that find a moment of enlightenment, and for you it was like, well, you found your place in a different way, in a new way, but it was also just a new set of train tracks that still had to drive out.
Yeah, that's true.
You still had to drive out. And so
That's true.
and so what I'm curious about is, as you went from that journey at 19 to ultimately you're married at what, 30?
32.
32.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of this I'm asking for, this is also me. I'm just authentically on my own journey of like, well, how did I really come to be?
Yeah.
And so I'm asking in earnestness.
No, so I'm going to answer that, and I'm not going to go off on tangents. I'm going to keep this succinct because I have a lot of tangents that I can go on. The answer to it is that in the same way, I didn't know what I needed when I came to the Creator. In the same way, I didn't know what I needed when it came to marriage and kids. Mm-hmm. And because of me meaning it, when I said, okay, I'll give it all up to you, I ended up walking that out over the next 12 years. And ultimately, he led me to the person that I should marry. And so when I married that person, I married it not primarily because, okay, she checked this box, and that would all be me and being in control, wouldn't it? Because here's my things, and da-da-da. Even though it isn't, anyway, not to get off on that. But it turned out that marriage, and let's start, was one of the most greatest gifts of my life. And one evidence of that would be you being here right now, along with 7 other amazing kids. One of them,
which one's your favorite?
One of them is adopted. That's a secret.
Okay.
One of them's adopted. But the reality is, bless her, I'm not sure she'd even be here either because there was so much trauma in the relationship. And in a way, she's one of the adopted one in certain ways is extra special, but that's another whole conversation. But so the key is that this person, again, it keeps coming back to it, that no matter how bad I am, and it turned out that I went through a divorce, so it wasn't all good. Yeah. And that would ultimately, a lot of people say, well, you failed at marriage. I actually had someone say it that way.
Yeah. After how many years?
26.
26 years in marriage, raising 8 kids later, homeschooling them.
Homeschooling, all of that. And and then I also, I was really into work, like a lot of guys. I did really well. I excelled. And so sometimes I look back on it and go, oh my gosh, just looking back on it is exhausting, John. And so anyway, I'm glad that we don't see our future because, especially if you're younger, you do not want to see your future. You just want to see what's in front of you. Okay? That's all I'm saying. And so I'm so glad that I didn't see all of the cost ahead of time because as a human and knowing my tendency, I'm sure I would have run away, freaked out. But I'm so glad for all that I went through because now I see a different hand. I see a smarter person. I see someone that loves me more than me, that he knew it would be good for me to do that. He knew it would be even though the cost of it, in this case, ultimately would be the cost of being married 26 years and then going through a divorce would be totally worth it. And I totally feel that way. I have no regrets. And so the place-theness of in marriage, see, in this case, the answer is the same thing, is that the place being placed has to come from a higher power. Otherwise, you're the expert on it, and good luck with that. Tell me when you hit the wall, whether it's tomorrow or 70 years from now on your deathbed.
Yeah.
Let me know.
It is something that is knit into all of us to so deeply desire belonging, and there's like a substrate. There's like a substrate in the human condition for a connection with unconditional love. Yeah. And it's like, basically what I hear you saying is like, if you want to find your place, you got to start there, and everything else flows from that.
Yes.
And yet there's really practical problems too, right? Like there's plenty of people that have a sense of place spiritually, but then the rest of their lives is a mess, and hey, shout out to all of the messes out there, because without a good mess, you can't be a great messenger. So not that that's a disqualifier.
That sounds clever.
Yeah.
But what's important, the most important thing is that you look good and be right. I'm sorry, that's a shout
That's
out.
the American way,
Shout out
right?
to
Yeah.
Keller Williams Trading.
Oh boy. All right. Well, we can touch on real estate. I mean, you've gone through all these different things, all these different life experiences, from software design, software engineering for 30 years, then basically unceremoniously,
Oh yeah, the merger.
The great merger.
Phone call. Here's 6 months' pay. Thanks. Sign it, or you don't get that.
Yeah.
After helping them acquire a $1 billion acquisition through being the primary designer of their best product ever. That's all.
So you have this unceremonious exit, in the middle of a corporate, kind of takeover.
Merger, yeah.
Corporate merger. And so, you're constantly posed, even long after the moment that you go through the introductory moment of train track switching to a different spiritual path.
Yeah.
You still have to walk out this journey of, how do I find my place today?
Yeah.
And so if you could go transport back into the thick of it, and this is where I want to get to.
Which one?
Transport to the back in the thick of
Which thick?
The thick of homeschooling 8 children.
Oh yeah.
Right? And you're working this software job. And in terms of, I'm curious what time it is, but I just want to get some advice, because I think that there's, I think there's people when they sign up for the job of parenting, where it's like you make the choice and then the choice makes you.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
it's not one of those rides you can just that you can easily just get off of.
No, it's
Right?
definitely
The
Hotel.
consequences.
It's definitely Hotel California.
Yeah, the consequences of stepping off that ride are super large, right? I mean, and we could go on a segue of like, well, what's really at stake with placelessness is ultimately the 2 categories of suicide that we see happening right now. The quick, abrupt, sudden, traumatic suicide that's up double, right, over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
That's now the second leading cause of young people in our country.
Yeah.
Or there's the slow suicide,
Yeah.
the resignation to, I'm running the clock out. I'm not going to go after my dreams. I'm not going to live fully. I'm not going to love deeply. I'm not going to leave a positive legacy behind, because I just want to get by.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's its own kind of suicide, right?
Yeah,
And so we see that all over our culture right now.
Yeah.
I think that parenting might have a way of exacerbating that, of pulling all the wounds up that were undealt with from when you were a kid, and of zapping every bit of energy you have in the tank. And so for the moms and dads out there, whether they're homeschooling their kids or not, I mean, you have a pretty impressive resume of homeschooling 8 kids.
Oh yeah, did I tell you about my kids? One of them's a doctor, one of them's an engineer. I'm sorry. I'll stop.
No, do tell. I mean,
No,
I want to hear about your kids from your perspective, because I think they're amazing. I think objectively they're actually amazing. They're actually amazing people. Every single one of them, despite the long checkered stories that we've all had to come to where we are. But if someone were just to ask you, John, tell me about your family and how did you raise them, what would you say?
Okay, so and part of this is now I can see it clear afterwards. You know how many
Yeah.
times you're just going through a lot of stuff and then you get clarity after you look back on, oh, that's why that all happened. And so again, very clearly what I see is that the invisible hand, you know, that brought me into that marriage, that invisible hand then held me up every day. And more than that, that invisible hand caused all these children to keep being born. You know, we didn't know what was causing it.
You didn't figure
And
it
they just
out.
kept happening.
You guys
And-
never figured it out?
No, I mean,
Okay.
and
Did you ever have people walk up to you and try to educate you on birth control?
we were in the supermarket, and you know, when you have 8 kids, you know, in a row, like, and so one of them was these people, and they look at me almost with a very serious expression and go, "You folks are crazy." And then another one, like, and it wasn't a joke. It was
Yeah.
like they were concerned.
Yeah, well, aren't you the problem?
You
I mean,
folks are crazy.
Yeah.
And then I won't even tell about. We actually had family members that before the twins were born, advised us not to have any more children. In a very kind and sophisticated way, bless their hearts. And then we also had people that communicated something along the lines that it would be that we already had a nice number of kids. And this is when we had 6.
yeah.
And to have any more would be irresponsible. So I know that your brother
Yeah.
Ben and your sister Anna are very glad that I
Yeah.
didn't take that extremely wise advice.
Yeah. We're all better off. Our whole world's better off because of those two.
So, but to really answer your question, Ben, the key for parenting is for you to stop carrying a load that you were never designed to carry.
Mm.
And that is that you are not that hand that holds them up. You are not actually even their eternal parent. But there is an eternal parent. You're a type, you're a temporary. They're given to you on loan. And they're given to you to help. But ultimately, and every parent has to go through this, you need to do what Abraham did. And that is where he was asked to surrender his only son. Why? Because if you don't, number one, you're going to crush yourself.
Yeah.
And I would have been crushed, man. And I kept on coming to that crushing point, sometimes on a daily basis. This crisis, this phone call, so-and-so did this. You yourself brought me to a few crushing points.
Yeah.
And all I could do is go, oh my gosh, this is above my pay grade. And
Yeah.
the thing is that I had that connection and I was able to get that assurance like, yep, it's okay. It's still part of the plan. And
Yeah.
this is going to work out for good. And so I was always excited when we had another child because when you have children, you don't add to your love. You get, it's a multiplication. You now suddenly have a bigger heart to love the additional child. Some people are also worried about I'll run out of resources. I know people, well, we're good now, but we don't want to have another because this is so good, we don't want to mess it up. They don't understand that as according to the divine plan, that whatever number that he gives, you will be expanded. The door will expand to fit the need. And
Yeah.
you will expand because it's all about generosity.
Mm.
And you find that the more that come, the more provision there is. And with that, there's also more purification. Because if you think about a plane going 600 miles an hour, it has to be a lot more streamlined when it's going 600 miles an hour than when it's going 100 miles an hour down the runway.
Yeah.
And there's more power, there's more stuff going by. And so they purify the surface of the plane, so to speak, in the process for it to go faster. So what I think happens in people's lives is that they are given opportunities to grow, take on more responsibility, but with that comes the purification that they can handle the 600 miles an hour, even though they start at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But if you don't let fear control, if you believe there's a great design that ultimately has designed you to go 1,000 miles an hour, even though during this purification process you're burning up because stuff's getting burned. If you don't believe that's all that there is, but you believe in a plan that you're designed to be this pristine aircraft that's going to go break the sound barrier, but this is where it's taking you, then you'll stay in there. And it's not you doing it to yourself. Nobody would really do self-improvement, really.
Yeah. Keep this close to you, by the way. Keep your mic close.
You get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. So I think that one thing I'm just reflecting back what I'm hearing, that one of the core tenets of great parenting ultimately comes down to surrender and to opening yourself up to be a conduit of divine love that's way above and beyond you. Because if you just try to do it alone, well, you don't go it alone. Shout out to our host, by the way, the Head Hearts and Boots podcast. This is our studio we're in. And Chris and Brandon, also fathers. I just have to give a little plug for their podcast, because I think that they just did a couple episodes actually on parenting and also on marriage. And what I've observed in a father like Chris, which I also observed in you, is this commitment to the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
I think really goes a long way. And one of the axiomatic truths I hear you proposing is that it absolutely is a baton pass.
Yeah.
At best, right? Like we think you bring a child into the world, and you're not going to be, ideally you're not there for their whole time here, right? Like that would be the tragedy if you got to see their whole life from start to finish.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And that would not be the ideal.
No.
And so when you think about that baton pass, how do you balance, let's go to the nuts and bolts of it, right? How do you balance deciding, okay, when am I going to intervene? When am I going to steer or coddle or comfort versus when do I let go?
Okay, so there's a million questions in life, right?
Yeah.
And so this comes back to this. It might sound overly simplistic, and in one way it is very simplistic, but it's also the most advanced advice that you'll ever find, and that is every new question you get, you need to go to the source of perfect wisdom with it, instead of first, let me try my best, and then if all else fails, then I'll ask for help. Don't do it alone.
Yeah.
And there's a word for that that's overly used, prayer.
Yeah.
But that's what true prayer is. And it insults our pride, which is our root evil. That is the root of all the other evils.
Yeah.
And so with parenting, you'll end up with that happening all the time, where there's crises. And sometimes the right thing is to totally intervene. And then sometimes the right thing, even with a baby, sometimes the best thing you can do, instead of trying to fix the baby who's crying by doing everything to let it stop. I mean, we learned this in early age. We were actually pretty good at it. Bless her heart, my ex-wife. And one of it is that we knew that it was good to let a baby cry it out sometime. We have a society full of, don't let anybody have any pain. Yeah. And actually people need to feel pain in order to recognize that they put their hand in a fire.
Yeah.
So not all pain is bad. And so even when they get older, then all the more so, especially teenage years, there's tons of times where you have to recognize that your child is ultimately, like you say, it's a baton pass, and they've always had a choice of their own. They're going to have to make their own choice on what they believe and what. In the biggest things that you hold dear to your heart, that's great, but don't you ever cross that line, that sacred line of free will, because even the Creator doesn't. So who do you think you are? And it comes in such subtle forms of manipulation, domination, control, religious, spiritual, and it's terrible. And it's not done purposely, but no wonder so many children that are brought up in otherwise well-meaning families totally rebel because that line was crossed, maybe inadvertently. So I've learned, and I'm still learning, even with my adult children, not to cross that line. And it can be very painful because you need to allow them to see them doing things maybe over an extended period of time that is truly harmful. Yeah. I haven't had one, but you could even, perhaps, what if you had a child that committed suicide? That happens, even to good people that tried to be good parents. And so there's these tragic situations, and if your whole life is defined by your child, well, you're pretty hosed. So that's why I come back to say they're wonderful, but
Yeah.
they're not your life.
Yeah. And you almost did have a couple kids and their life
Yes,
prematurely.
that's true.
And
That's true.
and
That's
you know,
true.
it's by the grace of God that you did it. And I think that maybe since we talked about that and we touched on suicide,
Yeah.
you know, it's not something that's not talked about enough for the family that is recovering from that.
Oh, yep.
Right? If you could go back, and I actually have never asked you this question, but if I had succeeded at my attempt
Yeah.
to end my own life at 12,
Yeah.
what would you have done?
Well, it would have been another one of those catastrophic moments of which I've had more than one where I would have had to go be to outside of myself and basically say, I can't do this.
Yeah.
This is beyond the pale. And so unless you do something new here for me, I'm hosed. And I've actually done that many times, but it would have been one of those.
And for a family that, you know, if we were to look at the Alcatraz of placelessness, which I observed many times, and I just had this recent experience where someone has gone through, they've touched on a sense of belonging through their spiritual walk, and they've had to deconstruct that,
Yeah.
which has resulted in them kind of sort of.
Throwing the baby out with the bathwater,
Well,
perhaps?
yeah, but
Or
whatever
maybe
it is,
they
it's
never
up.
had
Yeah, it's
the
up
right
shit
thing.
creek without a paddle, no matter how you slice it. And that was
Yes.
my own personal journey after going through a divorce. Right, was
Yeah.
I basically had to deconstruct down to zero to even rebuild anything sembling something authentic. And I'm just thinking about a few people in my life that are like going through like just
Yeah.
horrible pain right now, from loss and from grief and from the deconstruction. And you're someone who actually has got to experience those
So you-
max out moments a couple times, right?
So you just said it. You said deconstruct to zero.
Yeah.
So I have a friend of mine, we talk a lot, and our joke is we'll talk and have some real enlightening things come up, and then we'll both go, wow, that's a pro tip, you know,
Yeah.
just kind of jokey. Here's a pro tip. That where we need to get to, all of us, is actually down to zero all the time. In one sense, that the deconstruction to zero is only involving the stuff that needs to be deconstructed.
Hmm.
Another way to say it is that everything that can be shaken will be shaken.
Yeah.
And the more that you have married, if you will, vested, believed in that part that turns out to not be what you thought it was, the more you'll be shaken. But there does, in the universe, exist something that is absolutely good and unshakable. And that's also it's near. It can even be in near. I don't know where it is, but it's available.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as Jesus said, change your mind because the kingdom of heaven is at hand.
It can't even have.
And so that at handness, that change, like, okay, I rewire my brain to think like whatever I need is here. I want to go back to something you said about prayer because I think now we can study it more, right? Like the
Yeah.
power of just even prayer as a breath, it's energy. Our words create worlds. Our entire being is made of mostly water, which is actually molecularly influenced by
Mm-hmm.
verbal
Mm-hmm.
words.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say someone's saying like, I don't know my place in this world. I'm just a real estate agent, and Tim went live and he sells real estate. I wanted to learn how to help people buy a place. I thought that was solving placelessness. And maybe certainly it's an ingredient to it. But for someone who's saying, well, I don't even know where I would begin in connecting with divine love. Like whether it's because I have so much trauma from a prostituted version of it that was introduced to me,
Mm-hmm.
that it's associated with only evil or
Mhm.
manipulation or control, or I just have never, been around or been in an environment where that's been normalized to have a personal connection with divinity.
Okay.
Where would someone start?
Well, for me, I believe it started with probably three things. One is, and there's a lot of people that aren't going to like this answer. That's okay. It's true. is the
You-
Bible.
And you're answering for you, so that's
I'm
okay.
answering for me.
Yeah.
The Bible. By the way, I didn't like the Bible. I thought it was the most stupid, boring book in the world because I was forced to read it in Catholic school. And I'm going, are you kidding? This was the most irrelevant. But anyway, pieces of the Bible would begin to be presented to me during my adolescent years. And I didn't know what it was, that it's a unique book in that it's a spiritual book. And what I found out is that there was a person that was speaking behind this book. So the Bible was a beginning point. The next point was that I began to have brushes, if you will, contact with other people that have had an encounter with, as you would put it, divine love. They've actually experienced some degree of a personal encounter with God through Christ, and they would share some of it. Now, and initially, I thought it was intriguing, but I would usually mock them and argue with them. But still, there was something going deeper. So, Bible, other people. The third would be my own prayer. And that way I would call that is that there was a part of me that when I was alone realized that I was free to pursue truth. And what if truth's out there? And what if it's just true? Like, what if true is, like, what if there is this thing you don't have to caveat with, well, yeah, sort of, but it might not be the right translation and all the, oh, yeah, but that's just in our culture and it was true. Yeah, put all that aside, fine. But what if there's like a true that's so totally true that it's always true, there's no caveats, and you can like totally hang everything on it? Something about that just intrigued me. And I'm gonna go for that. And to me, that was like a prayer, and the prayer was something like this. Look, truth, I know it's kind of weird to personalize you, but if I can say truth, wherever you are, like, if you'll show me, if you'll direct me to you, I'll give up anything. Everything else will be secondary. And that was the prayer, and that prayer got answered.
I love
Not
that.
right away.
Yeah. And in sequence. So I know we're coming to the end of our time, but if someone was on that journey and earnestly at this crossroads of wanting to engage with you further about this conversation.
You want my cell phone number?
Yeah. Do you want
I
to share it?
literally drove all the way across the U.S. on the back of my RV. So yeah, people can text me anytime, 541-619-3148.
All right.
I'm not even worried about my identity being stolen. It's liberating.
Yeah.
actually.
Well, I know that. This will be a part one of many because on our around the corner we've got a trip coming up here to Europe next week.
Yeah.
You've never been to Europe.
No, it'll be great.
Have you never even been across the pond? Where have you been?
No. Yeah, I've been across the pond in the sense that I did go to India. I did go to South America. I did go to Mexico and some of the Canada, Caribbean and stuff. But the funny thing is when you broached this trip, which initially I was just, no, I can't do that. But it turned out is that I'm not real excited about traveling anymore. I've traveled enough. But in the back of my mind, the one place I did think is, the only place I could really see, one place I would be interested to go to in all the world would be Italy. And it just so turns out that is our initial point of arrival. So that's great.
And it sounds like we might have a run-in with the Pope at the Vatican. We'll see if that happens. And then you're going to...
I'm going to Czech Republic on my own, and then we'll be going to Switzerland and a little thing into France.
So if you had, one thing that you wanted to share as far as advice goes, and we'll get more from you guys. I'm sure we'll be posting advice on our little Italy trip. But a parting advice for our guests as it relates to
Okay, I got it.
placelessness and parenting, and we didn't even talk about real estate. I know we have a whole another episode we'll probably have to do just on your journey being a real estate agent.
Okay, so here's the advice. Guess
okay.
what? It's on the wall over there. It's saying head, heart, and boots. Well, serendipitously, and I didn't know this was true, I glanced down before we started this podcast at a verse, and the verse happened to say this. And I don't believe in luck or serendipity. I believe in sovereignty. And Jesus said, and he said to him, you shall love, there we got love up there, that's the heart, the Lord your God, that's this perfect divine creator I've been talking about the whole time, with all your heart, it's up there, with all your soul, that's the boots, and with all your mind, there's the head. It's right up there. And so I would say you're doing something with your head, your heart, and your boots, aren't you, all the time? You can't be a vacuum.
Yeah.
And so the opportunity is that we can learn how to have a love relationship with the only perfect being, but he won't force it on us. And my advice to people is to pursue that relationship.
So in summary, to solve placelessness, be a conduit of love. Acknowledge at first that it's there,
Yeah.
right? That it's there in endless
Yes.
supply.
Yes.
For anyone who's willing to reach
Yeah.
out, it's at hand.
Yes.
With no budget.
Okay, but stop. So here's a pro tip. Ready?
Okay. Yeah.
When people put the conduit part first instead of second, it screws up everything. Because before you're a conduit, and I know you implied this.
Yeah. You got to receive it before you can give
They
it.
think of the horizontal part.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's so subtle.
Yeah.
And that is pride too.
Yeah.
And that's why my advice, especially for those that do know Jesus, and I've seen so much of this in the church, is be aware that some of your problems is you're putting the second commandment before the first.
Mm.
The second commandment is to love people as yourself, but the first commandment is to love God with all your heart. And how do you do that unless you're not having that relationship be the first motive? I know some people who think that they get to God through what they do.
Yeah.
Like that you earn divinity by how good of a person you are in the world.
Yeah.
Jesus said clearly, there's only one that's good, capital O-N-E.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to be good anymore because there's already one who is good. I'm just trying to submit to him.
Oh, well, this brings up a bonus question then, because what I hear you saying is it's not a line, it's not a playing field, it's an intersection or a cross, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
And so, let's say I'm coming off of, let's say it's a theoretical situation. I go to the beach. I bring my bucket full of pain and trauma and questions and anxiety and uncertainty, and I call out the truth, and it meets me in a solo experience. And as the waves are crashing down, I'm enamored and surrounded by nature. I have an encounter with what I can only define as divine, endless love, and it becomes accessible to me as my right as a child of God, as a kid, to an eternal parent. Now I get filled with all this passion and joy and excitement and desire to do good. And I drive over the pass back to the valley, back to my 9-to-5 job, or my my screaming child, or my, insert X day to day. Now I got to put hands and feet to this love. I got to put work to it. What advice would you have for the person who is stirred with compassion from an eternal well and just wants to leave the world better off? What would you tell them?
I tell them exactly the same thing that I just told you. Great question. The downfall would be for you at that point is to put the cart before the horse. Making an impact on the world is the cart, not the horse. And as you received that first touch, and you go back to your job and all the screaming kids, the first thing is to go to that source and go, help, and I'm not going to do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
Because we sometimes get tempted to get all connected with our inspiration, and then it's like Jesus said, okay, I want you to go be my ambassadors. I'm leaving now. Go do it. But he didn't say that. He said, and lo, I am, which is a throwback to an Old Testament thing about the I am, the eternal presence of God.
Yeah.
I am with you always. And this is not a one-time deal. This is something that's so pervasive in the church, particularly the Western church, of a form of godliness that denies the power thereof, the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Fair enough?
Yeah, fair enough. So we didn't talk about the skull, but I know
I think the skull is the head.
Well, it's the head, but I think the skull is also, since we're using this as our frame of reference, Okay. Um, since we're using this as a frame of reference, um, the end of your life, looking back, what had to happen for you to be absolutely thrilled with the life that you lived and how you left it?
Yeah, so you had to die.
Yep, you had to die.
You had to die,
You're gonna die.
and you don't do it once.
Yeah.
And so that's what Jesus meant when he said they were all excited, like, "Oh, we want to follow you. Look at all these miracles and all this great stuff, and we'll be able to impact society, and we'll be able to fix all these things because you're the Savior." And you go, "Oh, great! You want to follow me? Okay, here's how you're going to follow me. You're going to take up your cross. And you're basically going to die to yourself daily and follow me, which just means that you begin to put down that natural tendency that we all have to do it the wrong way."
Yeah. Well, I want to acknowledge you before we sign off. I want to acknowledge you for a few things because there are a couple of ways that I think that you show up on the practical. With us in the Find Your Place movement, we've tried to come up with a minimum viable product for entering into the game of generosity,
Okay.
which is to say, if you're an individual or an entity that wants to start engaging with solving the problems, consider just starting with 1%. 1% of your revenue, or maybe it's 1% of your time, or maybe it's 1% of your income. Just pick 1% of something and start there.
Okay.
And I think my hope and the strategy, I got that off of a download, really what I felt like was a divine download
Okay.
motivated by compassion for myself.
Okay.
And I think that what I've observed is the more I move into that stream, one, the more I get surrounded by generous people, and the more I move up the chain from, well, what if we go from 1% to 2%, or what if we go from 2% to 10%,
Yeah.
which we've done with some of our companies.
Yeah.
And what that kind of that process of surrender, what it really is moving towards, I think,
Mhm.
is something that I see you doing,
Okay.
which is the 100% club.
Okay.
What happens when you get so tied to the journey of generosity that you just put all of your time and all of your resources into the hands of benevolence and say, whatever I do, I'm gonna put it out
Yeah.
there. And I just wanted to say thank you
Oh,
for
sure.
being that level of inspiration,
Amen.
not just to me, but to many people, to inspire generosity. And I'm sure that will be another conversation probably for another time of like, well, how do you do that with boundaries, and how do you do that from burning out? And there's all these other questions that come with that. But I just want to say thank you for being generous with your time,
Yeah.
your energy, with your love, with your resources. Thanks for having 8 kids. You had a cool family. You have a cool family.
Yes.
I think they're cool.
I do
And a
too.
lot of other people do too. So
That's nice.
good job.
Oh, thank you.
And for all those tuning in, there's a couple of sponsors that I wanted to shout out, but I think I mentioned this early in the week. We talked a lot about kids. We didn't really dive much into the homeschool education thing.
Oh,
But-
yeah. It was awesome, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really
with,
was.
With mixtures of things not so great.
I think that the heart behind it was awesome, and certainly I learned how to take responsibility for my education journey.
Yes.
But for those that are like, well, we don't want to roll the dice that much with our kids, because it turned out, like in all intents and purposes, but a big part of why it turned out was because we were all able to get into college
Oh,
early.
you mean that? Okay, but
Underage
you mean
enrollment.
that 6, or however, most of them graduated from OSU or U of O at like whatever 2 years early.
2, 3,
Oh, I'm
4,
not
5 years old.
boasting.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah. All the kids graduate college early, and so I think that there is something that's important to talk about. I think right now, as it relates to young people, and it is education, and it is taking responsibility for like what our education journey is. And so,
That's a good point.
I wanted to give a shout out to a couple private schools that I've had overlap with, in going through this journey with Maisie.
Yeah.
And one of them is the Corvallis Waldorf School, because I think when it comes to asking great questions and creating a platform for curiosity and discovery,
Yeah.
I just have to shout out Corvallis Waldorf School. They've done such an amazing job
Yeah.
of creating a place for kids.
Yeah. I agree.
And especially everywhere from like, there's something that's very uncommon in modern education, which is a teacher that actually follows kids through the whole journey
Yeah. No, that's
of
really good.
their parent, of the education, right? You get saying the teacher you get in first grade is more often than not the teacher you graduate with in 8th grade from Corvallis Waldorf School.
I went to their presentation. I had some preconceived prejudice,
Yeah,
and I was very impressed.
they love kids well. They love Kids Well, and so I just want to shout them out. And I'm biased because I'm on the board there, and we're trying to
Yeah.
work on enrollment numbers. So I'm just gifting them the sponsorship window because
Yeah.
we got to do something for our sponsorships. Loyola said, but I also wanted to shout out as another option for a great private school in Corvallis, Ashbrook Independent School. They invited me to do a TEDx talk on September 19th, and our topic is solving placelessness.
Mm.
And I just think it's really indicative of the spirit of excellence that's at that school, that they would go through all the effort to host a TEDx. That's not an easy thing to do.
Okay.
And it's something that, they're really gifting to the community. And I think that it's a really telling image of the kind of school they are. And the auditorium that we're talking in, it's 400 people. By the way, if you haven't gotten your tickets, I just got news that it's sold out. So there'll be 400 guests. Maybe we'll live stream it. I don't know about that. We'll figure that out. But there'll be a TEDx on September 19th, and we're hoping to record that and get some of that content out to you guys. But I wanted to give a shout out to those two schools. So I think they're doing a really good job championing education. And obviously, if we want to solve placelessness, we've got to start with the young people. If we want to see this really be impacted for future generations, this will be a very non-traditional way to end a podcast. But if someone was moved, let's just assume for those that don't want to get prayed for, you can feel free to sign off now.
Yeah.
But for those that are curious to stick around for the spiritual stuff,
Yeah.
and this part's not endorsed by any of our sponsors or our hosts, but this is just father and son talking. And as someone who's greatly benefited from the prayers that you've uttered over the course of your life for me, thank you, Dad. And I know I'm almost certain that there's just at least one person watching that would that could use some prayer. And for the person out there that's saying, man, I'm really feeling out of place in this world and myself and, in my body, in my job, in my family, in my country, in my state, whatever it is.
So can I pray for him?
Yeah. You want to wrap us up with a prayer?
And whoever you are, here's the thing, is you just need to listen, because that is what will change everything. So Lord, I pray that you would speak to individuals right now, and they would hear your voice, and they wouldn't be afraid of you, and they would open their heart to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. That's a wrap.
Yep.
Thanks. Appreciate you.
No, that's great.